Hello everyone, welcome to the Manse, and I hope that in whatever circumstances you're in, that you are doing well and that you have great plans for improvement. I'm Lydia Ruth, and I'm speaking for a little while to entertain you while you get a few things done. Maybe you'd like to listen to some poetry. I may begin with poetry first. I'll share with you my teacup for the day. Some of the teacups that I have been given go really well with the fabrics that I enjoy using in my sewing room, and this is one of them. Now today I would like to remind you, if you're new here, to click the link in the description box and go to the page, the blog page, on which I have embedded this video so you can see the things that go with it and maybe some of the poems that I will put on there that I have read to you. I'm going to begin this morning's poem with Prayer for the Home. If you could print this out, I will try to put it on my blog so you can find it, but if you could print this out and say it every day to your family, there are some very pointed things in here that will touch your heart, because I know all of you planned and hoped and prayed for this type of home where everyone liked each other, where they encouraged each other, where they lived for each other and defended each other and loved their parents too. And so today is the second part of Conversation at Home. Most of our breakdown of the home begins with the tongue, begins with the things that people say, and they run wild with it. And I will talk about that, particularly today on unfiltered conversation. So we will talk about that after I read this poem. Hope you're getting dressed. Hope you're getting ready. And at least if you're ready and things don't go right for you, at least you were dressed for it. That's what I always say if ever, when I was younger, if there was some kind of commotion or somebody was upset, I would say, well, at least I looked like I was normal. Prayer for the Home by Edgar Guest. Peace unto this house, I pray. Keep terror and despair away. Shield it from evil, and let sin never find lodging room within. May never in these walls be heard the hateful or accusing word. Grant that its warm and mellow light may be to all a beacon bright, a flaming symbol that shall stir the beating pulse of him or her who finds this door and seems to say, "Here in the trials of the day." Hold us together, gentle Lord, who sit about this humble board. May we be spared the cruel fate of those whom hatreds separate. Here let love bind us fast, that we may know the joys of unity. Lord, this humble house we keep, sweet with play and calm with sleep. Help us so that we may give beauty to the lives we live. Let thy love and let thy grace shine upon our dwelling place. If I had a school at Ashcombe, this would be a prayer that we would memorize, maybe even quote together every day. And I think a family should have a poem like this that they quote together, and that they should just understand it as well. It should be analyzed often, and questions should be asked about it. You could make a whole curriculum out of it. So I'm going to do a little bit of it here. I like keep terror and despair away. Now you might think the home never has terror. Terrorism happens out there somewhere in the world during a war. But terror to the heart in the home, some of you may have already experienced it. When unexpectedly someone who belongs in that home or who is somewhat related to that home or familiar with you will create terror for you, emotional terror. And it is by the things they say, the cutting things they say, the things that they do that, what you would say, separate you or betray you to someone. And it reminds me of a woman who said she couldn't figure out why everyone at home was upset with her when she was doing a good job as a mother and a wife and a homemaker. She tried her best to please them. Well, someone else in the family was running her down to all of the immediate family, and she didn't know it. She had no clue. And they were saying cruel things about her. And here are some of the things that I listed that harm the conversation of the home. And we should, first of all, I mentioned last time about the shared spaces and how you can't have privacy when there are shared family spaces, and you can't shut out other family members in the shared family spaces. And today I was going to talk about how even some of the private conversation has to be well regulated, well guarded, and that it can't be something that is not edifying or something that tears down. And so I want to, now there's nothing wrong with a mother and a father discussing the needs of their children by themselves late at night. That's not considered bad at all. You might say, well, Johnny, I need to help Johnny more because he gets anxious, or I need to help Susie more because she tends to feel sad sometimes. So there's nothing wrong with discussing that, but it shouldn't be spread around to all the relatives, because here's what happens years later. I will first list the things that are a detriment to the home in conversation that can be causing trouble that I have observed over the years and heard about. And one is, of course, driving away a parent. I found a parent. You know, there's very similar words there, aren't they? A parent and a parent. That'd be, I do the look-alike, sound-alike words for my grandchildren sometimes to help them have a lesson. And those are a parent, A-P-P-A-R-E-N-T, and a parent, two different things. So I want to read from the Proverbs. Now, the example I use is a parent is in the room or with their family in the house, and some of the children create such a ruckus or talk back to her so badly, or are listening to music that she dislikes, or talking in a way that she dislikes, or being very insulting. And rather than fight the good fight, she finds it too overwhelming and she just has to leave. She may even have to get in the car and go somewhere else, go to the Walmart where they're paid to be nice to her. But here is what it says in Proverbs 19:26 through 27. Let me see if I can find this. He who starts out with he who mistreats his father and chases away his mother is a son who causes shame and brings reproach. Cease listening to instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. Now, in those days, you could say something like that to his son, and they shivered. They were scared of it. They wanted to do right, because the only way you could get anywhere in life was through the approval and the help of your father and mother. It's going to get that way again sometime, though. Now, of course, older children find different ways of making their way through life on the success of other people outside of their home, or with the help of relatives. There are many relatives that when they find out that, especially a homeschool child or a Christian child has been instructed at home and he's disgruntled, and first thing he does is run to the ones that were against his parents and hope for their sympathy, which he'll always get. And now they've got your child, and they're so proud of themselves. But he who mistreats his father and chases away his mother is a son who causes shame and brings reproach. Cease listening for instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. And so that is one of the things, a conversation in the home is to have the conversation so odious that it drives people away. And even as a parent, you can be so negative and so unkind and so harsh that everyone or anybody can leave. I talked about the shared spaces when you're in a shared space last time. When you're in a shared space and someone walks through, they're welcome to join. You don't ever leave them out or deliberately drive them away. But sometimes you'll find someone in a shared space, people gathered around, and soon detect that this person is going to contradict constantly, talk over them, constantly correct them. How many of you have ever been in a situation where no matter what you say, you're corrected? You know, they'll say, no, it was not a mile, it was 1.5 miles. And no, I did not drink 3 cups of coffee, I drank 2.5 cups of coffee. And no, the sale wasn't 15% off, it was 15.5%. And they're such sticklers for these teeny tiny little details, and they feel obligated to correct you at every turn. So you can have someone in a shared space that is so difficult, and he's constantly correcting, and so people start leaving the room and leave him or her sitting there alone. I saw this happen at a tea gathering that some really nice woman, a little wealthier than most of us, had put on, and she had put tables around, and her guests had all seated themselves, and they were having a wonderful time. But there was one woman at a table with about 11 other people, and she began doing this unfiltered talking, where she was not leaving space for others to participate. What that means is carrying on such a long sentence without a pause that people couldn't even say, uh-huh, I see, that's nice. You have to pause every now and then and allow other people to be included. And some women think they're up there to make a speech in any situation, even in a shared space in the living room. They think they're there to make a long speech, and no one can interact with them. And this woman was doing that, and she also was being contradictory, which means no matter what someone said, now this is not the same as correcting. No matter what someone said, she would say, well, that's not always the case. Well, not in every situation. Well, that's not always true. Well, that could be wrong. And then she was also correcting every tiny little thing, and she was just being, but you know, some of these people, bless their hearts, they think they're being conversational. They think that's how you converse, is you talk back and forth with people in a disagreeable way, and they don't even know that it's disagreeable. That's why I say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But now that we are grown up, we need to know not to do it, and we need to know better. And by the time you're 30 or 40 years old, you ought to know better. So don't be the one that gets left in the shared space, in the family area, in the shared family spaces, open spaces we call them, open areas. Don't be the one that they all flee from and go and gather somewhere else, maybe even a private space with the door shut, just to get away from you. And if you're young and you're listening to this and you're at home with your parents, what you are doing right now is what you will become when you're elderly. And as you know, there's nothing worse. I mean, you expect the smart replies and the hasty, sharp replies, and you expect the goofiness and the silliness, and you expect the contradiction stuff in children. But to see it in an elderly person, it is somehow more hardened and disagreeable and worse, because especially in a woman, and all of you probably have had an old relative back in the day that couldn't be nice if he couldn't have tried to be nice, and he might trap you in everything. Might say, well, how are you doing, and what are you doing? And you would say, well, recently I've been doing, and he would say, well, that's not very smart. Why would you want to do that? And he trapped you because he asked you the question, and then he contradicted you. And so these are the things that destroy family life at home. It's mostly what comes out of our mouths. And probably better to be like Emma, and when something disagreeable comes up, you say, I see the tea is here. Let us go and have some. So I think pie and coffee is what kept people quiet in the olden days. They didn't have a lot of time to do all this unfiltered talking. So remember they had this saying, shut your pie hole? And it just meant be happy to sit and eat pie and drink coffee and don't talk if you can't. They used to say if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. So now this is conversation at home number 2. And the other bad habit in conversation is that some people demand apologies. They're constantly demanding apologies, and the apologies they will live high on for a little while. Then they have to conjure up another hurt and come back and demand somebody else apologize to them, because that validates them. They feel ennobled by it. They feel healthy by it. They feel validated if they get an apology every now and then. Everybody's groveling to them. Everybody's saying they're sorry. They don't want to offend. And most of us, if we're Christians and we hear that someone's upset with us, we'll just immediately do all we can to apologize, to make up for it, and to ask for forgiveness. But some people don't really want that because they want to keep the war going. So there's contradicting, there's constant correcting. Sometimes it's better to be alone, isn't it? The constant correcting, the contradicting, not leaving space for others to interact, the unfiltered talking, the driving away of other people, the demanding of apologies. And here's another one, is bringing up the past. Now, some people are naturally embarrassed, and I think that's good. I think we ought to keep our natural embarrassment. And a lot of people mistake shyness. They'll say they're a shy person, they need to be more socialized, and then they'll overcome their shyness. There's nothing in the Bible says we have to overcome our shyness, but it could be that they are easily embarrassed and they're quiet because they know that it's safer to be quiet. And I have seen many people push children into anti-shyness by forcing groups on them or friendships on them that you could tell the child did not like, and that it backfired on them, because soon the child became less quiet and less embarrassed and less tendency to be shamefaced. You know, shamefacedness is just a shyness where you kind of pull yourself closer together and retract a little bit from too much attention. And sometimes I have seen parents who've been told you need to take your child to more social things so they will get out of their shell. You know, if you let people grow naturally, they will come out of their, quote, shell. But there's nothing that indicates that in the Scriptures. As a matter of fact, it says it's a quiet and gentle spirit that the Lord loves. And the gay life of the party is not mentioned so much. So, also privacy. Here's the thing, talking about things that should be talked in private, spoken of in private, are often just talked about in the shared spaces, in the shared family spaces. Now, there's still a difference between the men and the women and what needs to be talked about. So when you're in a, quote, mixed group, that means men and women in the family, the girls don't talk about girl stuff in front of the boys. Bodily functions, pregnancy, any nursing, anything else. Some things are embarrassing to other people, especially bodily functions and really private things. And the older women, I think, are particularly bad. They just talk about anything in front of anybody, even at a potluck. I'm just like, wow, you know. And so, but we're talking about the home right now, the house, the shared spaces. Some things don't need to be spoken of. And I remember in Wives and Daughters, now you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this book, Wives and Daughters, and the movie series that went with it, which is very good. She was talking to Lady Cumnor at the hall. It's towers. There was towers in the hall. And Cynthia, her daughter, Hyacinth's daughter, had been just allowed to go and engage herself to different fellows and then break it off and engage herself to somebody else. And her mother had no idea that she was doing this, so Lady Cumnor took it upon herself to tell her she had neglected her daughter and she had not led her in the right way. And she told it in front of Molly Gibson and Mrs. Cumnor's own daughter and someone else. So they were sitting around drinking tea, and she said, "Now, Claire, I've been wanting to tell you this. You have spoiled that girl of yours. And now she has engaged herself to Mr. Preston and who knows who else and all this." Well, Hyacinth was shocked. Now, in the movie, you tend to dislike Hyacinth, but there were a lot of good things. She had feelings too. And on the way home, they were walking together, I guess, down the little road home, and she told Molly, she said, "These things are nice when one is alone with the other person, but sitting around in a room with everyone drinking tea." And so she was upset because something private was spoken of in front of other people, and this is another problem. Now, talking about embarrassment, it's good that Hyacinth was embarrassed. It showed that she was human. People today aren't even the least bit floored by the stuff they do that will ruin their lives. Everything you do, girls, even if you're 18, everything you do builds a history for you. And any place you go, anything that you do, you have a history going on that might harm you in later years. You want to be very, very careful to be above board in everything. But this, she was pretty upset. If you want to go and find that scene, and I don't remember which video, which disc it was. But the idea of bringing up the past is another problem. That's what this reminded me of, because once there was a family that had several girls, and one of the girls had accidentally got something that belonged to her sister, and she was so excited. I think it was a coloring book, and she started coloring in it, and it wasn't discovered till sometime later. "Look what you've done," and everything. And the sister was so embarrassed and so apologetic, and she cried, and she offered to get her a new coloring book. But the rest of the family played on that. They focused on it, and they capitalized on it because of her natural tendency to be embarrassed, and they just enjoyed putting her down, and it went on for years and years and years, and to humiliate her for a mistake that she had made. And this is the type of thing that goes on in the family and in living rooms. We shouldn't bring up the yesterday's problems. We shouldn't say, "You got in trouble yesterday. And remember, you did this. You accidentally locked the door on me when you went outside or when you went inside and I couldn't get in. Remember that?" Do not go through reminding people of all the colossal failures they have had. There's no point in it because it's not edifying. And edify means to build up and to improve. And you've got to be an edifier. And so the other thing is to demand apologies. I think I covered that just a second ago, but I want to go into it a little bit more. There's always someone that feels better if someone else is apologizing to them. And sometimes these demands for apologies are just a cover-up for their continual sin. And when they demand apologies, they're never happy with some of them. They'll say, "You weren't sincere," or "It wasn't a real apology." And then they will be upset with you because you didn't apologize in a way that was satisfactory to them. So it just goes on and on and on. Now, the other thing that harms the family in conversation, I was reminded of this. I don't know how many people this have experienced it, but I was watching an old movie called September, and it was from a novel by Rosamund Pilcher. And of course, I didn't know what it was about. I thought it was like a historical movie. And it was an American lady who had married an Englishman and gone to live in England. where it was a custom to send the children away to a boarding school at a certain age. And this man and woman had had an adorable son, and they all loved each other. She loved her son, and she interacted with him very greatly, and they enjoyed, having this child in their home. It was their only child. And behind her back, the husband registered this boy in a boarding school quite a ways away. I think it was in another country. And the wife was naturally severely stricken and astonished and upset. And she said, "This is a major decision, and you should have been discussing it with me." He said, "I'm discussing it with you now." Well, see, this is going on today too. There's nothing new under the sun. This is going on today too, where someone in the family will make a decision that affects other people's feelings, affects the way other people are going to conduct their lives, affects their emotions, affects maybe even them in a money sense, affects how they function in life, affects their happiness. We all like to have peace and quiet and the love and the support around us, and then someone makes a decision and carries it out and doesn't discuss it with the other person or people in the family, and then they get very disturbed and say, "Why didn't you? We want to discuss it before you do things like that. This is really huge, And the other person will say, "Well, and why didn't you tell us?" "Well, I'm telling you now. See, now I've just told you. And I'm discussing it with you now." Well, goodness, it's too late. And this has gone on. This is teenage behavior, but adults do it all the time. And that is thinking that they will make a decision and do it just because they are in the position to do so, and no one can stop them. So they'll make a decision, even as far as just really drastic things, sometimes selling the house, sometimes moving, sometimes doing things with the children that the wife hasn't discussed with them yet. And I have heard of some really drastic things that people have done that disturb the marriage or the home. And then when asked, "I appreciate it if you would discuss it with me first," they'll say, "Well, I'm discussing it with you now." Well, it's too late. And they know it too. So this is devastating. This is the kind of sneakiness that goes on with little kids too. And it should not. It starts in the home, and then it graduates to the marriage. And I knew of a man who he grew up in a family where the relatives, let's say that there was like 4 aunts and 4 uncles, and their parents had set into place this constant arguing, where they would say, "This brother here, he's not good today. This girl here, she's good today," and all this. And they got the 8 of them constantly leaving each other out. If 4 of them would be against 4 of them, and then 3 of them would be against the others, and then some of them got to, when they were older and had their own homes, would not go to a family event if 2 of them were there. And we all hear about this all the time, don't we? Or they wouldn't show up, or they would show up even though they were not welcome, and it was just such a mess. And this filters down to the current generation too, where they think it's normal to have the children against each other and against the parents. They think that's just normal as can be. And but if you've been homeschooling, you know that's not true, because you start out with your family at home and they like each other. It's when they get around other people that they start to siphon away from the parents and start to find differences. And so it can be quite devastating. And those are just some of the things. I'll just go through them again. And that is driving away a parent, unfiltered talking, not leaving space for others to interact, ruining open spaces by being contradictory, constantly correcting, demanding apologies. Ruining opening spaces mean everybody leaves you sitting there, and they think, the one that's sitting there says, "No one has any respect for me because they all leave the room when I'm in here." And then they harper on the respect, and they demand respect. if you have to demand respect, you're not functioning very well. I never demand or command respect. Best thing to do is have respectful behavior yourself, because you can't get it by demanding or commanding it. You could for a while, but as the kids grow older and they get married, their mates aren't going to go for it. Okay, the best thing to do is behave in a respectful way and respect other people, and just work on your own progress. Um, telling of an action or decision after it's already been completed, demanding apologies, and preying on other people's embarrassment and bringing up the past. These are all things that can harm the family unity. Now, in homeschooling, I found that harshness in homeschooling will fail to educate. It's not about trying to get the right answers in all these books. It's not about knowing so much about science or knowing so much about history. I would emphasize that you do have to learn to speak correctly, and I really liked, grammar, composition, and because it's refining, and it is good to know a little of this and that, but it's harshness in homeschooling will become a failure to educate in good attitudes and love of life. You want them to love life. It's not about all these being smart all the time. It's about how to live, and but you have to embark on your own example and progress from day to day. So while you are teaching your children, I think it's really good for them to see that you're turning the house into something beautiful and better, and that you be a good example of stewardship, and that you find something to learn, or you write, or you paint, you have your things, because they are going to look at that as an example. I'm going to read a poem to you about the home and try to catch up with you on some of my notes here. Oh, if you're looking for something to watch that will teach good manners, I believe among women, I think it's probably be for women, and maybe teenage girls might enjoy this, or maybe even really young girls might enjoy this. And it's called Affairs of the Heart by Henry James. It's from Stories by Henry James. Remember, he was the one that wrote The Bostonians, which I would not recommend the movie The Bostonian, except unless it's a real old movie. Because I think they turned it into something that it wasn't. But I believe that Affairs of the Heart, there were something like 12 stories, and each one was named after a woman, and one was Alice, one was Grace, one was Emma, etc. And if you can't find it on Amazon Prime, there might be other places you can watch it. And it's really, really, they're good stories based on values. And I like it because it shows women, two types of women. Some women are more, they put up with things that are wrong, but other women have a very, very nice way of turning things around so that everyone does right. And so Henry James, he saw this in women and men. And these are really good, clean stories. Affairs of the Heart by Henry James, and if you could watch those. Sometimes when I'm not feeling well, I'll find something like that, and I enjoy it. Now, some of them were a little bit difficult for me to understand, and I just started the next one. Some of them got a little complicated for me, and so I'm going to read another poem about the home, if I can find it here. The Home Builders, it's called. Excuse me for hitting the table here. It's a little bit wobbly. The world is filled with bustle and with selfishness and greed. It is filled with restless people that are dreaming of a deed. You can read it in their faces. They are dreaming of the day when they'll come to fame and fortune and put all their cares away. And I think as I behold them, though it's far indeed they roam, they will never find contentment save they seek for it at home. I watch them as they hurry through the surging lines of men, spurred to speed by grim ambition, and I know they're dreaming then. They are weary, sick, and footsore, but their goal seems far away, and it's little they've accomplished at the ending of the day. It is rest they're vainly seeking, love and laughter in the gloam, but they'll never claim to save it, save they claim it here at home. For the peace that is the sweetest isn't born of minted gold, and the joy that lasts the longest and still lingers when we're old is no dim and distant pleasure. It is not tomorrow's prize. It is not the end of toiling or the rainbow of our sighs. It is every day within us, all the rest is hippodrome, and the soul that is the gladdest is the soul that builds a home. They are fools who build for glory. They are fools who pin their hopes on the come and go of battles or some vessel's slender ropes. They shall sicken and shall wither and shall never peace attain who believe the real contentment only men victorious gain. For the only happy toilers under earth's majestic dome are the ones who find their glories in the little spot called home. Now, of course, I've explained to you that home is a combination of the dwelling place and the people that are in it. A house is not a home. And so a home can be wherever those people in the family are. I wanted to read one more time from Philippians 4, verses 4 through 7 on the antidote, the cure, the prevention of anxiety. I always used to wonder, why would God say, do not be anxious about anything, when it's just impossible. You get some anxiety that wells up in your chest and you can't get rid of it. But when you are on the cure, when you're on the mend, it takes a while. It goes through a process. Your mind takes a while to change. And so this is why people head for the allopathic solutions, because it's like a pain medication. Some of them zap the pain away instantly. But when you're doing it naturally and thoughtfully, it helps gradually take away some of the symptoms. So here is, I'm sorry I keep kicking this little table. Rejoice in the Lord always. Okay, rejoice. Now, you get a little anxious thought, then you're going to have to find something to be joyful about. Okay? But it can't be harmful. It can't be a vice that's going to ruin you. And the rejoicing after that, one thing builds on the other. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. I looked that up in the Greek, and it meant reasonableness and refinement. And there was one other word that meant. So if you're going to let that be known to everyone, then it's just going to have to show in your life. Do not be anxious, but by everything in prayer. So there's prayer. So let's look at rejoice, refinement, prayer, with thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. So you throw in some thanksgiving there. You can get up in the morning and you feel that dread coming on you. There's so much to do. You don't know if you're succeeding. Maybe you feel you're failing. And you look at your life and you say, I've done all this work and I have tried so hard to raise my children and point them in the right direction. And there have been many people against me. They finally seems like they've won and I've lost. You get up in the morning and you take that little teaspoon that you're stirring your tea with, and you look at it and you're just thankful you've got a teaspoon. You thank God for the water. I'm hyper about hot water. I'm always glad I have hot water. But it's just these little things, even the dewdrop on the grass. When you're putting your clothes on, thank Him for everything. This little bit of thankfulness chases away anxiety. And you might feel foolish because it says in everything by prayer. And you start to feel foolish, like every time you think a thought of failure or a thought of disappointment, you stop and pray. You'll say, I'm going to be praying all day long. But you can get a lot done and still be praying. And it is quite normal to do that. Let your requests be made known to God. People think about praying and praising and thankfulness, but what about requests? You wouldn't be much of a father if you couldn't ask him for something. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Please try to read this every day and to do it, and see if it has an effect on your anxiety level. We are probably living in an era where maybe something in a bag called anxiety is just dumped all over us every day. Oh my. And I also have an interesting book here called The Cracker Barrel by Eric Sloan. And if I had to do it again for boys, I would just buy these books for their curriculum and have them mull on them and read on them, because the drawings and the illustrations are just so excellent. Great art, and it shows you where things come from. I'm trying to find a page I saw here that was really interesting. Well, I keep losing it, but I will read to you what I have found here, and that is well, there are so many old things in here that show where things came from that it's really hard to find them. This is about the first paper bag. Now, I've always liked paper bags. I can do a lot with them. So I wanted to read to you about the first paper bag. But I'm still busy looking for... You can get something done while I'm looking for this other thing. It was about the flour bag. So I want to go to the cloth flour bag first. Okay, so I found that, and I'm going to read this. It said there was a respected item like the bag that store-bought flour was sold in. This was so much better than the paper, although it did leak out sometimes. But I really think that flour ought to be sold in huge tin cans instead. It was made of printed cotton, and every farmer's wife could hardly wait to empty the flour bag, wash and iron it, and make a new dress out of it. Then there was the blue paper that loaf sugar was wrapped in. I've never seen loaf sugar. It was this paper, boiled in water, that gave the old-time farmer's wife her blue dye. That's kind of scary, isn't it, that it was wrapped around the sugar? The first modern-type premium was introduced in 1865 in wrapped soap. People at once complained that they were paying for the paper wrapping. So he just printed the word coupon on the wrappers and gave a beautiful lithograph for 10 of them. Okay, now, the first paper bag. May 28, 1867. A historian's lot is sometimes an unhappy one. For instance, last night I saw a show that featured Abraham Lincoln as a storekeeper. And the important trivia to know is about the paper bag here. He failed to really explain it. The first paper bag. They portrayed Abraham Lincoln as a storekeeper. He sold a lady some candy and said, "Here, I'll put it in a bag for you." The very small fact that the bags were first called pokes. You've heard that story of the pig and the poke, and what it was a bag. It was kind of like a surprise bag, or you thought you were buying a bag of something like flour or something, and you'd get it home and it was just a pig or something like that, called a pig in a poke. The very small fact that bags were at first called pokes, and that I guess because you just poke stuff into it, and that the first paper bag hadn't been invented yet caused me just enough concern to shatter the illusion of an otherwise wincing play. No, he doesn't explain it as much as I wanted to, but I liked it that it was invented, the first paper bag, and that it has lasted until now. They're still very, very popular, paper bags. I looked on Pinterest, and there's so much you can do with paper bags. I saw whole garlands of flowers being made out of strips of paper bagging, and they were colored and painted, and many other things. Whole wedding parties with the runners going down the tables, and they're somehow decorated. It was very interesting. I often thought if I had a spare room, I would try paper bag decorating it. Okay, now I just want to say there was a magazine around here that I brought in here, and for some reason cannot find it with my stuff. Let's see if I can find it. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit more about health, and last time I had spoken about the problem of cold sores. Maybe it'll show up. It was the problem of cold sores, and I mentioned several things like keeping your hands clean, keeping things away from your face, but I forgot to mention exchanging your toothbrush, if you're using a toothbrush, throw the old one out and get a new one in quite regularly. Don't just keep using that one over and over. I know even if you rinse it off, but many things can prevent or get rid of cold sores. And the other thing was these soft facial brushes people use to wash their face with, and the products that they use, and makeup brushes. Those need to be, I know people wash them and use them again, but they could be thrown away and start over or not use them at all. And I always felt like with the bacteria from a makeup brush, women would do better if they're using makeup or any kind of cream or anything on their face to use their hands. You can always rinse your hands. It can always be clean. And sometimes I do watch videos of women using makeup, and the ones that seem to me blend it the best are using their hands. And so that's why it's important also to keep your hands clean. Well, I suppose that I will find it all. All right, here was one that I had an old magazine that someone gave me. It was from May 2021. I guess that would be an old magazine called Country Living, and I think it was probably in a free issue. And I thought this concept of keeping the home was so interesting. And it had a picture of this entryway outside with the vines growing around it. And the name of the article was quite clever. And it said, "Turn this scene into a room." So what they did was they cleverly took what they liked, the colors, the materials, the kind of wood and everything, and they picked out products that they could do inside and created an arrangement in the home, in the living space in the home. And it was quite an interesting concept. And I was outside walking, noticing the daisies were growing and the contrast against the green grass and different things like that, thinking about articles like this and how you could turn this scene into a home. This is something homemakers can look forward to. It isn't all about just keeping the dishes washed and the food on the table. It's about developing your own skills and creativity, and so that even if others question your validity at home, you know that you are making progress in your own life. And so also Greater Health God's Way, since I had been talking about health. And another thing is, so much with cold sores, so much touches our faces. And if I were to design sheets, you know, the top sheet comes up to your face. If I were to design sheets, I would have a cuff of pure fine cotton on the top hem of that sheet that would touch your face, and you would have a clean one every night. I know rich people have clean sheets every day and clean sleeping wear every single day, and we need to think more about that. And it wouldn't hurt us to try, and also stop using detergents. Many of the one of the reasons that we get any kind of skin infection could be the residue of detergents on everything. And I now wash everything in white vinegar. People worry about the smell, but it always goes away. And you can always mix it with a drop of, lavender essential oil, or you don't even have to have essential oil. All I do if I need a scent is to boil some lavender, and then I've got lavender water for a while, and or something else like basil or sage or anything else that I can find. And so when you eliminate detergents, there's a lot less skin problems in your home. There are a lot less skin problems. And people who have eczema have noticed that it changes. I've explained this before. You can get a little book, and you can go online to find out all the things vinegar can do. And one of the things that it can do is you can also use it as a dryer sheet. I hate the smell of dryer sheet. I've developed a very big barrier to anything like that. Dryer sheets and sprays and Febreze and things that were supposed to be scenting the home. No, thank you. And you can get it wet. I talked to you about wash rags last time, but here's one good thing they're good for. You get it wet and you soak it in vinegar, and then you throw it in the dryer, and it will also soften the clothes, and there won't be any static on them during the winter months when you can't hang things outside. And rinsing is really important for dishes. I know some people wash their dishes in dish detergent liquid and then dry them, but they have to be rinsed in hot water afterwards, because you can get a lot of things, and even stomach problems and strange infections and diseases and skin problems from the detergent being still on the plate. You might not think it's on there, still on the plate, and it mingles with the food. And so I've always been my mother was a real stickler about having a pan of hot water just for rinsing the dishes when we used to hand wash them. And then when the original washing water got dirty, she would dump that out and then move the rinse water over to that side and put a little soap in it, and you would wash the dishes. But then she'd have new hot, it was boiling hot rinse water, and she could wash the dishes so well that they did not need to be dried with a towel. You would just put them in the drainer and they would just dry naturally. And sometimes even the dish towels, I know in Fly Lady, one of the things that she said on day 1 or 2 was about keeping the sink clean, was put a clean towel out for the next day. And some people just use their dish towels like for weeks and weeks, and they think, well, it's not dirty. But dish towels dry things that might be related to touching your face and might have food in them. So we need to have those clean too. Now I wanted to just give you the outline to Greater Health God's Way by Stormy Omartian, or whatever her name is. Can't quite pronounce it, but this is real health. Now, the doctors don't promote health, it's medicine. So that's medical. That's medical. This is health, okay? So these are the 7 steps that she designed, and it was written in 1996. And you can get these still online, some of them still new. It'd be nice to have a class with one of these. Peaceful Living, and she discusses stress. It's quite dated, so some of the things that we've now learned about some of these things probably don't apply. But she includes in Peaceful Living and cutting down on stress that there are two kinds of stress, and you need some kinds. And she includes things like having an overflowing heart of love for God and your family, and to be creative and to simplify. And then number 2 was pure food, and she talks about all the things that are added to foods that she has a little chapter here, God's food and children's stomachs. And the things that affect diet and appetite. And she shows how the body is all connected. And even Brian Kozlowski, in his book, The Jane Austen Diet, had a chapter called The Mind-Body Connection, which I just loved. Because emotionally, many of us when we were children, if we'd been crying or if we'd been crying, we didn't want to eat. And our food wouldn't have digested very well. Or if someone was cross at the table, or if someone was talking about things that were not nice, it could turn your stomach and you lose your appetite. And so she talks about how this connected what affects diet and appetite. So the first one was Peaceful Living. The second one was Pure Food. The third one was Proper Exercise, and it was talking about just ordinary, the way to breathe, and how to just normally exercise throughout the day and with what you're doing. The next one was water, all the different things water can do, not just drinking it, but washing things in it and bathing in it and all the things that it can do. And then she connected it, of course, to Scripture. Water's mentioned a lot in Scripture. And the 5, and by the way, you people in England, we're not saying water, we're saying water, and we're rolling the tongue at the top of the roof of our mouth, and we're rolling it like better, water, later. We're not using the D. We are rolling it, if you listen more carefully. Anything that has a T in it, a lot of things that have a T in it, like letter. I'm writing you a letter. And so we're rolling it. We're not saying, I'm writing you a letter. It's a letter, but we will say it by rolling the T, which sounds a little bit harder. And for starters, and I can think of, I made a whole list of all the words we say where you're just rolling the T, and it makes it a little harder, and like harder, larder, and so I wanted to mention that to you. So then she has fresh air and sunlight, and we've gone beyond that now. She doesn't mention this, but we've all learned that half an hour before sunrise and half an hour before sunset, if you'll go out in that blue light, that natural blue light, you sleep a lot better. And then she has perfect rest, and she talks about natural things on the bed. And years ago, I kind of got a sleep disorder. I couldn't figure out what it was, so I started gradually changing all my bedding into cottons and linens and things, that were woven or natural too. And I found feather pillows, and I found other things that I could use to see if it would make more healthful sleep. And then she has, so she calls that perfect rest, and she has a chapter on what steals your sleep. And one of the things I had to put my foot down on for my whole family was, don't bring up problems half an hour before bedtime, because they'll all sleep like a baby and I'll be up. And because it really does affect me. So don't start, if you're going to mention a problem, do it first thing in the morning, and don't talk to me about it after 4 o'clock or I won't sleep. And so she talked about equalizing rest with work, and so it's really a good little book. I find it better just to get something like this and read it myself. I don't like to attend classes on it, but I thought you might enjoy hearing that. And then I wanted to encourage you to get this, if you can, the Anna Green Gables Treasury, and you might want to make your own book, your own little scrapbook similar to this, and they have about the hope chest in here. And I wanted to say to some of you girls at home, if you're thinking of running out and pursuing things of the world and getting jobs and starting, you think that you need to go do that, you need to be home seriously thinking about the hope chest. And you can buy many books now online about how to fill it, what to put in it. You think times are going to be very easy and everybody's going to come together and give you all you need when you get married, but that might not happen. You never know just what things are going to be like. And so even if you do get all those things from other people, wouldn't it be nice to have a wooden box and start filling it with homemade things, and start making little baby clothes, start making soft cotton dish towels. You can find a list of things that should go in there. And even if you get better things and you never use it, you've got samples. See, what these were, what the hope chests were, also were patterns. So if you made something for a hope chest, like a pillowcase, the daughter, when she grew up, could use that as an example or as a pattern of how something was put together. Maybe you made a little quilt, but it became a pattern too. It became something to pattern after. And remember, I had started a class years ago, and it was based on a modeling class I had, and so I called this class Model Your Life After Good Things. And it was my spiritual modeling class, Model Your Life After Good Things. And I used the phrase from Philippians 4:8, whatever's good, lovely, pure, and every class was named one of those words from Philippians 4:8. And oh, we had a wonderful time. I'll try to relate more of it to you as time goes on. I'm just going to try to do better. So ladies, I hope you have a lovely day and that this has been somewhat entertaining for you. And I hope that you get a few things done. And I'll talk to you later. Stay close to Christ. Bye.